you look ahead, continuing through school, going to further school, maybe getting into a career, what you think you might like to do as you grow up, when you grow up. And I know that's way down the road. And you might say, well, I'm not sure, but just what has maybe crossed your mind up to this point? All right, now, we're going to start thinking through some ingredients that I want you to consider as a base for beginning to build leadership that actually ties to these areas that you think you might be working in as you grow up, so to speak. Now, the first thing I want to do is, I don't know if you can see the word up here. Everybody see that? Everybody see that word? All right. Now, that word says science. Science. You think about where you've heard the word science. You heard it in school. You've heard it outside of school. For a minute, on your paper, what I'd like you to do is write down your definition of the word science. What is science to you? What it is to you. It's food for thought for building what you have laid out. Now in my work, I'm involved in education. I'm also involved in research. And with my involvement in research, my umbrella is science. I work under an umbrella of science. So, I have to say to myself, okay, what is science? What's my view of science? Now, I come up with this definition, and it's not to say anybody did anything wrong. It's building what you've been saying, but we begin to see that we expand our thinking about what science is. Science, first of all, as I work on it, my handwriting is terrible, so, is a process. A process. I'll come back to that shortly. A process that my wife is telling me my handwriting clarifies. That clarifies. Now, a formal word that's used is called explicate. E-X-P-L-I-C-A-T-E. But I'm just going to talk about clarifying, making clear. Science is a process, and I'm just putting key words up here, that clarifies the unknown. 3 key words. I heard these words as you gave me your definitions of science. I just want to emphasize them. All right, now, we're going to start with the unknown. And say, whoa, okay, what is that? A word that starts us exploring what it is. I know you can read that. You're very good. You must do translations. Bad handling. Phenomenon. Phenomenon. And you say, wow, phenomenon. I hear that word, and I say, what is it? So write the word down, phenomenon, and then think about it. Think about the word phenomenon. Anyone have a thought about it? Yes. Something that's extraordinary that happens. Okay. Yes. Something special that's going on. Very good. Yes. Something that can't be explained by the usual typical explanation. Wow, you're all cooking. One more. Did you started to raise your hand? No? All right. Did you start to raise your hand too? No? See, I watch hands. I'm like an auctioneer. You raise your hand, I go, so, I pick you up. All right. Now, For me, a phenomenon, and it's not saying anything you have is not right, is nothing more than that which exists. Something that exists. Oh, thank you. All right? Now, that opens the door. So we're going into the unknown, and we're looking to see what exists. And we can use a lot of different words for phenomena. Now here's the key for me as a scientist. I'm an applied scientist. And what I do is I take a look at that word that. And I was reminded of this morning in the sermon from Father George. Father George's sermon. Early in the sermon, he talked about that which is around us to include a physical element but also a spiritual element. And it was a very important reminder that I was receiving from him, and understanding that that which is around us is not just physical, but also spiritual. And that's important because as we think of science as it is practiced in our society, this tends to be a slant or leaning toward only addressing the physical. And science seems sometimes to get off on a path of its own, apart. Yes, please. I submit it's a bias. Now, when you raise that observation, there's a whole line of thinking we could get into. So you see me chuckle because I say, oh, I wish I had more time to follow that line of thinking that you're introducing. But it is a bias. It's a slanting. It's a leaning. Absolutely. So what we have to do is remind ourselves that this unknown about creation, for me as a scientist, includes lessons and mysteries that God has here for us in God's creation. And that makes me very, very excited. I get very excited because I say, oh, this process can help me, building from my observation of my Orthodox religion, building from liturgy, building from Scripture, from the Bible, building from that base, continue my learning in terms of entering the unknown to understand the lessons and the mysteries in God's creation. Isn't that extraordinary? No, it's unbelievable. So as I hear you lay out your definitions of science, I said, wow, you have quite a solid foundation for this. So that's the big view I get, and it is what is my basis of faith as I apply my tools of science to dealing with that which exists in our world. So I'm saying all this to say I want to underscore the power you have in your minds and in your hearts and in your spirits with this thinking, with science as a base. Now, clarifies, making clear, we're going to go now to process. And here, we're going to introduce the word thinking. The word thinking. You're writing that down without even me asking you to do that. Very good. Thinking. Yes, it's worth writing down. Now, what you're getting with thinking is the key element that helps you to build a leadership perspective for sharing and encouraging and supporting others in our world, in your world. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of a leadership perspective. As we bring in the thinking, we now have the basis of science and faith, science and spirituality, as observed through religious practice, integrated, tied together for the benefit of humankind. Thinking is the bridge. What in the world do I mean by thinking? All right, a little activity I want you to do. I want you to take that word or a couple words that you identified as where you see yourself headed when you grow up. Teacher, program, no, not programmer, what was technology, whatever. Put those two words. Now this is what I want you to do. I want you to look at those two words and say, how might I draw a picture of that word? What I want you to do is look at your word and you say, I'm going to draw a picture in terms of what that word means for me. Okay, yes.
What I imagine, how my experience doing whatever it feel like.
Yeah, imagining, kind of projecting yourself, putting yourself ahead there to see what you might be doing. You had your hand up. Yes.
My motivation for doing it.
Ah, now that's interesting. So it gives you a chance to stop and think about almost like why, huh? Okay, yes.
So what items I want to deal with while
What items you want to deal with. Oh, very interesting. Now, why do you think I had you do that? Draw a picture. Isn't that kind of silly? Why do you think I had you draw a picture? Yes.
Because in order to draw the picture, we get to think about all of those things, our motivations, and the stuff we were doing.
Bingo, absolutely. The reason I asked you to draw a picture, because when you go to a picture, not to replace words, but to accompany words, to support words, you know what it does? It gets the thinking process going. You stop and you go, oh, I never thought about this. What's my motivation? Oh, I could see myself doing this and this, and then this. So it becomes a base for beginning to think about what's going on. So, the message here is the heart of thinking is what we call imaging, creating representations. If you go in to see a surgeon, what am I trying to think of for your knee? We've been in
Orthopedic.
No, Karen.
Orthopedic.
Matt.
Orthopedic.
Orthopedic, I'm sorry. We've been in and out with our kids in sports. Orthopedic surgeon. What does the surgeon have to do to make a diagnosis? What does she have to do? Put her on an x-ray. Has to get an image. It's not complete, but the best possible image to get that information. I got 5 more minutes.
Oh no, you take your time. Yeah, no, I didn't say anything.
I get carried away, so I have to
No,
keep
that's
myself
perfect. It's
my
great.
limit. Yeah. So it's what we're doing here is I'm saying, all right, create an image of your direction, your area, so that you begin to pull together this information and you begin to process it, you begin to ponder it. And it's that thinking process that is the heart of science. Science is a thinking process, and it involves representation or imaging of ideas. And that's the beauty of science that you expressed in your individual definitions of science, is that it is a way to engage all the possible things going on in God's creation, in God's universe, in heaven on earth. So with that image, I am able to pursue my science from a strong base of faith. And my colleagues that I work together as applied scientists, we approach our science from a base of faith, which means we are using science to learn the lessons and mysteries of God. There are bounds. All right, now, I'm going to get a little technical on you. I'm just going to give it to you as food for thought. We can take thinking and we can actually begin to teach strategies for thinking. Dr. Karen Banks, my wife, and I, and others, we've gone into many schools, from Washington State over here to Virginia, and we've taught teachers first, who then teach students skills for thinking. They talk about metacognition and higher order thinking and critical thinking. Those are all nice ideas, but you got to teach students how to do it. It's the how-to that's critical. Now we've pinned down the how-to. We're going to give you a piece of the how-to and see how it applies to what we've been talking about here. All right, I'm going to draw a structure for you. And there are 4 parts that are connected. And a way to demonstrate this, let me ask you, anybody here know how to cook?
Without burning the house down?
Without burning the house down? All right, you have a favorite?